is down to the team leader in most cases. For the work of a storyboarder, you can see how much one episode storyboarder are worth. Episode directors too have a set fee per year episode has dual animation directors. I think they should be more closely examined. Yeah. Oh, I think it was just a snippet. Did the voice actor industry learn from the script writing industry? There are a lot of points concerning the Script Writers Association. After they debuted and have a number of scenarios, they are able to decide as part of the group contract how much a single 30-minute anime episode script should cost. So, in the cases where the studios make a group contract, although there are also individual direct contracts, they pay according to what's written in the contract. This is something I hear often. Is it true that for scripts one can get secondary payments? Yes, that's right. I didn't know. Voice actors incorporate those secondary payments into the total amount stipulated in their contracts from the start. So effectively, it's a pay raise with regard to the initial figure. Specifically, does secondary use refer? Yes, that's right. It's mainly reruns. Also, of course, sales of the media has a product, discs, etc. So whenever a show is rerun, you get a little extra when DVDs are released. In the case of a rerun, they must pay you separately. Or if you are a voice actor, now the payments for the reruns are already included in the initial guarantee. In the anime industry, there are many small businesses. That includes studios too. It's very tough for a studio to survive in that situation. And on top of that, when you think about the freelancers, there's people that can't afford to choose what work they do. And then there are staff who are very in demand. They do good work, but they're not given enough credit. That's a problem, so we have to find a solution. It's hard, but we have to gradually change your way of thinking. You can say that for animators, directors, the studio staff, and also the producers in the committee who are making all the orders. I think all those involved, the stakeholders, etc., they need to be aware of this. A low-level in-betweener who asks for his pay to be doubled would often be rejected. If the very in-demand animators try something similar, then the pressure on the companies is different. I believe that the first step would be to build up that sort of leverage by gathering many people. From the perspective of people in other industries, it would be good to work together. But for some reason it doesn't work. The thing with Janica, we've seen, understand and leave things up in the air. For example, if I had a networking gathering of 200 people and asked everyone, let's join our union, there would be nobody there. I mean, I get that the earlier generations had bad experiences with Janica, so they would automatically be apprehensive. They are all very negative regarding those kinds of stuff. That's true. It could be just an age issue. There is also a sense that it's a bother. When they look at Janica, they feel that it's especially bothersome, so they're afraid to get involved. Well, honestly, it's a problem that's not going away at some point. Someone has to deal with it, or nothing will ever change. In any case, unions in general have become really weak anyway these days, yeah, in terms of our society. I feel like there are many people who don't really. It's actually an extremely small industry, so that if you can take a look around, you can recognize most of the people. So if your goal to form a union, it will likely be very tough to realize. It's both a very small world and one in which skills So there is a gap between those that can do good work and those who can't. On the other hand, you can't really make an anime just using the best animators in the biz. Therefore, at that point, you have to balance the work. I think the people that will be key in all the negotiations concerning returns would be the animators or character designers if they can argue for greater remuneration regarding those positions. You mean a push for a minimum guarantee for character designers, animation directors, etc., right? Those are really the key players that make up each project. They're the ones that have a direct involvement with whether or not a work ends up being good. In my opinion, there should be a minimum guarantee for keyframe and in between artists. Yeah. So there should really be an association of animation directors. That way, animators can decide their own ranking among themselves, similar to the Scriptwriters Association. But for the profession of animation directors, what do you think, Nishi-san? I'm not really sure. I think lumping all animation directors together may end up being problematic. How many people do you think Quartet has animation directors these days? How many? Well, for starters, there are people doing it who shouldn't really be doing it. And then there are those that are really skilled but don't want to be animation directors, so it's impossible to say. It's hard for the people on the outside to understand that to make one anime, there are certain people in central roles. But as for the people on the inside, the people in the industry, it's odd, but there are cases in which the scenario was good, so the direction is easy. And then there are cases in which the scenario is lacking, but you can make up for it with good storyboards, or maybe with more effort in the animation. In those situations, the job of an animation director, or rather, someone in higher rank, like character designer who makes or breaks the project, should be properly reviewed. So put simply, I think we should look at how we reward the roles they played as animation director compared to the writers. There are all these different jobs: scriptwriters, directors, storyboarders, animators, colorists, etc. Essentially, the nature of the work on each of these categories is down to the team leader in most cases. For the work of a storyboarder, you can see how much one episode's storyboarders are worth. Episode directors, too, have a set fee per episode, as do animation directors. I think they should be more closely examined. This is a very specific example, but I think you can just get 3 people or so together and make an association of animation directors. Then, as the association, you can declare a certain minimum rate for an animation director for a TV series and state specific appropriate amounts for chief animation directors. They should shake up the industry by declaring these new rates as a production company, and many people will likely come on board because it's really good pay. Then the animation directors who agree with the aims of the association don't really need to do anything other than put their names down. Or they can simply put their name down as a semi-member of the association. Then they can make declarations representative of the association. They can make declarations, but it would that many not necessarily right. I think it will work if you are at the top with the sun, and then you have And this is not just for animation directors, of course. I would really like it to expand and become an animators association. I'm repeating myself, but it would be most effective if the people central to the production had a voice. It's not good just about being rewarded for good work, it's about having to tackle how fairly and transparently their work is being remunerated. I also don't think that anyone would fault you for making statements like, these days animation directors should be receiving at least X amount. Rather, they would probably think it was a long time coming. We need people who will come out and say these things, or at the very least have fans supporting them, in order to improve the situation. Yeah, I feel like something has to be done. But then, if you make an animation directors association and fill it with character designers, animation designers, chief directors, etc., the in-betweeners will surely feel they're being looked down. Yeah, no, ultimately the goal is to make an animators association. But the people in real trouble in the industry who don't make enough to eat and who end up on the news are the in-betweeners. They are only making 1 or 2 million yen per year, which is of course a problem. But what you're trying to say is that the ones with real leverage against the production companies, if you were to make an association, would be the character designers, the animation directors and chief directors, right? Yeah, that's right. The people central to the projects are also the ones central to the industry as a whole, as strange as it may sound. I think those central people are thinking about the future as well. For example, it's not like one can make an anime with just a single character designer and general animation director. Those animation directors and character designers got to where they are now because they did in-betweening and keyframes for a long time and honed their skills. Thus, I cannot believe that they would think I'm an animation director, so I don't care what happens to the in-betweeners. They know that in-betweeners and keyframe artists are essential. However, under the current situation at the studios, I don't think that the in-betweeners would get in line and stand by them. That's why the core players have to find a common language and speak out. I think that's the best way to get the message across. If I was on the other end, I would feel compelled to listen to what they have to say. So for example, if you were still the president of Aniplex today, and this issue came up from below, would you get on it? Yes, I would probably go up to A1 or rather Cloverworks now, for example, and say, here's something we have to consider. In other words, it's best to strategically approach specific places. Yes, absolutely. So rather than saying raise the pay rates for in-betweeners, it's best to decide on minimum guarantee for character designers and animation directors, and then gradually improve conditions from there. But conversely, imagine an approach from the bottom, where you can gather a group of animators and act as proxy negotiator. I would be negotiating as their proxy. Wouldn't it be easier to just go up to the production committee and say, look, add all these animators from different companies and demand a budget increase that way? Well, not so much easier, more like a useful bargaining chip. It's due to the work system reforms that a lot of studios are having problems because they are being pressured into paying overtime or risk being reported in breach of the Labor Standards Act. So it's all changing. They can no longer say, well, you know what you signed up for. Rather, in the act of creating things together, it's important to not allow to such oversight to occur. That's the era we're living in. If you formed an union, it would probably take some time for them to actually listen. As I said before, the situation the studios are in is different now. The approach towards the creators is different too. There are studios and producers that say they don't need to be. They can judge by themselves how to pay back their creators. There's a lot of different ways to think about it, but if it was me, That's what I would do. So basically, it's like, I got it, it's fine, I'm handling it. I understand, but still, who is...
芦田さんの話じゃないんだけど、やっぱりそういうクラスの人が全部はまとめなくてもいいけど、あとだからね、西井さんとこういつも話してるからだけど、監督もいろいろな人いるじゃないですか。いますね。はい。で、監督協会もあってもいいんじゃないのとは思ってるんだよね。原作に近いことをやれば原作者としてちゃんと認めて、原作料として払うとか、プロジェクトによっては。
There are companies that pay royalties from disc sales, depending on the project, like Toei does.
成功報酬として作品がね、すごく利益出た時には成功報酬から分配すると。だからやっぱり自社コンテンツを持ってね、ある種余裕がある IP を持っている会社とそうじゃない会社の明らかに今差が出てると思うんで、でも IP とか持たなくても持てなくてもとにかくものを作ってなんとか。
But for those companies that don't or can't own IP, honestly, it's just not possible for them to become the next Toei or Sunrise or TMS just by continuing to make anime under the current business scheme. I think a lot of people in their 60s will agree with this, don't you? The problem of people in their 60s. I really think so. I too know what it's like. As you get older, you watch as your coworkers start getting social security. It's very stressful and also sad. So that's why you have to do something now while you can. Yes, that's why you should also be giving special merit payments for those who worked in the industry for 20 or 30 years. I am an otaku, so I believe in the otaku. I want to bring the otaku over to my side. Yeah, you should say to them. If we don't all cooperate... What? Let me repeat it. You should say to them, if you don't all cooperate, I'm gonna quit Jujutsu Kaisen. Great.
なくすなって人の仕事勝手に。じゃあまた西井さんの教えて塾長もありますが、それ以外のイベントも今いろいろ調整中でございますので、オンライン飲み会もやりますので、アニメプロデューサー機関講座企画のことについて語りますということで、皆さんそれではさようなら、お元気で。お疲れ様でした。はい、お疲れ様でした。
Yeah. That was very interesting. It's always cool to have an insight on the industry as foreigners who don't know much about it, as myself. I am in no way qualified to talk about it. I'm not Japanese. I've never been to Japan before. But the image that I got is that everybody knows that there is a problem and that the payments are too low and the work conditions are bad, but then actually doing something about it is troublesome, so they just don't. And nobody wants to take the blame for it or fight for it, so they just keep complaining. And not even complaining sometimes. I do think that the comments are off for this video. Let me check. Look, comments are turned off. So you can clearly see that this is a touchy subject. But anyways, that's how the situation is today. We hope it gets better. And if you like Jujutsu Kaisen, please support this cause. And just, if not, Nishi is going to quit Jujutsu Kaisen's production. And we don't want that, right?